The digital art era is here. AI and art creation tools empower anyone to make it. Blockchain technologies allow anyone to own it. VR, AR, and extended reality immerse us in it. Let's talk to artists and innovators behind the visual magic. I'm your host, Roger Dickerman. Welcome to the future of art. Today, we welcome Patrick Amadon. Self-labeled as a digital disobedient and by others as the glitch god, Patrick's voice across art grows more convicted by the day. He is an artist, activist, curator, technical innovator, and visionary. Let's get to it. Patrick Amadon, welcome to the future of art.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you as always.
Digital disobedient are the first two words on your Twitter bio. Can you break that down?
I just wanted to distill it to the essence of what I'm trying to do here. No, it's fun. I mean, look, it's fun. It's fun needling everything. It's fun poking at the structures. It's nice. I don't know. I feel like so much about the art is about disrupting a lot of these silly and absurd systems, and I think a lot of that comes down to disobedience. It's kind of the first step towards actually making some changes.
Let's take one quick step back from the disobedience just for a moment. I promise we'll get back to it. How do you define art?
Define art. Well, it's a tricky one. I think there's a line between product and art. I think ultimately what art is something that has some real relevance and significance in the real world. I think it's using creativity to create an object that tells a story or narrative in a real way. I know that, I feel like a lot of times when you try to define art and it's broad, you end up including a lot of products and, objects that require creativity and some level of visual execution in order to finish, but they wouldn't necessarily qualify as art. So there's a critical element in art that I feel like separates it from just creative expression. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough. I think there's always got to be a critical element in art. And what that critical element is, I feel like can vary widely. But how about creative expression with a critical element?
I like it. And that's why we're here to talk about it, break it apart a little bit. So tell me the first time that art entered your world. Maybe when that critical element entered your mind that you started to see the difference between art experience and product.
I guess the first time art entered my life, I grew up with comic books. So, I had that cool older cousin who, showed up one summer and had a bunch of comic books. And, this is right around the time where Image was just getting started as a comic book label. So I just dove in heavily to that, and then decided to start drawing my own. So that was it. That was kind of the beginning. I just did a bunch of comic book art as a kid. The first time art entered would have been high school. I had this is high school. Imagine the high school version of yourself, and imagine there's a class that offers a dark room at 9 a.m. in the morning where you just stare at a large screen in the dark. I figured I was going to get an extra hour of sleep, which I was excited about. And it turns out it was an art history class, and not only did I not sleep, I was kind of fascinated by the whole thing, and the teacher was amazing. And the funniest teacher I had my entire life. It held up. And that was the first time I really got into art history. And then after that class, I ended up studying art history at university and went down the rabbit hole. But it all started with me being a teenager, really just wanting to hang out in a dark room at 9 o'clock in the morning in high school.
It's not a bad deal.
Yeah, not a bad deal at all.
When was it clear that art would be your future? When was it clear that this would be it? Where on that journey was it clear that, hey, I'm going to be doing this for a long, long time and making it my everything?
So I studied art history and economics because, you know, I've got a pragmatic side. But I didn't start actually really creating art until after school. You know, a few friends and I went out and bought paint and canvases just on a whim one day. We set up in the middle of our Hollywood courtyard, like basically every Hollywood apartment has. You know, the courtyard with some pool built in the 70s, you know, and we painted out there and we finished up and something clicked. I really liked putting paint on canvas. They went home and that was it. But then I went back to the store the next day and bought more paints. And then, you know, a couple of years later, I did my first solo exhibition at a gallery in Los Angeles. And yeah, it was just all of the art history and everything else. And, you know, my notes in school were always more doodles than actual notes. I mean, the signs were all there, but it wasn't until actually just like doing this activity after college that it all clicked. And then I realized like, oh, okay, there's like something special about this for me. Like this is going to be something I'm going to do for a long time. Whether or not I could actually turn that into a career was, you know, always a question. And I struggled with it for, you know, years until NFTs. I mean, it wasn't possible for me to make a living until then, which I'm really grateful for. You know, but you know, it's you know tough to support a family in the contemporary art world until you kind of break through. And you know, like we talked about before, there are a lot of barriers to breaking in that world. You know, there's very limited wall space. There's a long line of MFAs and friends of the family, and yeah, it's a really tough world to crack. So just that's one of the things I appreciate most about art space and the digital art movement is the inclusivity of it. And I really appreciate how it offers people here around the world the opportunity to make a living doing this and to be able to break in a real way. It's not a perfect meritocracy as we see, but it's a much better meritocracy than what existed before. And having come from, you know, nearly a decade of what had existed before, it really meant a lot to be able to make a living doing this. And I'm grateful for it. And it's one of the things that really, really feels important to try to give back for me, just kind of philosophically and spiritually. I recognize what I was able to get from being able to be included in the art world in a real way. And just want to see that happen for other people as well.
Let's take one step back and connect two dots, because you mentioned it first hit you over the head when you were putting paint on canvas. You clearly referred to the physical nature of that. And we jumped ahead a little bit talking about the inclusivity of digital art, the opportunity of NFTs and ownership in that sense. But connect those two dots. How does the physical canvas become a digital consideration for you?
Well, I really like doing it, and I did it, and I was like, okay, this has fundamentally altered the direction of my life. Like I don't know, it just the moment of clarity, just doing the thing. It's just something clicked in a very real way that never clicked before, and it was like, okay, like I just changed the direction of where this is all going. I need to go do this more. How do we figure this out? And then I did that for a couple of years, and then Twitter and social media came around, and this was back in 2012. So hopped on Twitter, posted some of the art that I posted a painting, and then realized that it's going to take me a few months to come up with a new painting. You know, I'm doing like oils and heavy oils and like 7, 8, 10 layers. I mean, it just took forever to dry. Sometimes like a thick layer will take 2 weeks to dry. And I always hated when the colors turned green or brown from, you know, over mixing. So the whole process took forever. And it's also why I just avoid brown and kind of the muddied green in future work. It was always a failure of composition early on. But yeah, I hopped on Twitter, posted the piece. It didn't look right. It didn't look right. Just taking a photo of something physical and putting on Twitter, it just didn't feel like there's something off about it. It didn't feel native to the space. So, and also I, realized I wouldn't have content for 2 months. So what if I make a digital version of the physical piece and put that on Twitter? That might feel more native to the internet. So I kind of backwards walked myself into glitching it. I like the effect. So I dug into how to glitch things, and I started making glitched versions of the physical pieces, and people just started loving the glitched versions of the physical pieces. And then I was even more stuck on an island, because not only am I trying to break into the contemporary world, which is difficult, I'm now making these glitched pieces of physical works, which are even further from being able to break in a contemporary world, because no one sees any value in digital work. And everybody just wanted to see the digital work. So what do? I mean, I love doing it. I love doing the digital. That became more interesting than physical work. But I mean, all part of the process. Everything always started with a physical piece and ended up as a digital piece. So I just did that. So I just did what I like doing. And I just made a bunch of physicals, ultimately to turn them into glitched images for Twitter. And then did that for 8 years until NFTs.
Prior to that concept of ownership, the ability to own digital art, which of course then opens it up to collectors and investors and all sorts of counterparties for an artist, right? How do you think about what you're doing? I mean, obviously you're doing it for love of the art. You're gravitating towards it as a process and as an experience. But when you're sharing it out on Twitter and I guess in one sense building a social following, but are you thinking at all about the career aspect there?
I exhibited a few things. I'd met some gallery owners and some art managers at that point, and everybody was kind of like, okay, that's cool. We can't really do anything with this, and I honestly you just kind of punt at that point. It's like, okay, I'm making this thing. There's nothing I can do with this thing right now, but I like making it. I guess this will just be like something that I like doing. There just wasn't any way to make a living doing it. And I didn't want to work with any brands. I didn't work with any companies. I just wanted to make art. So it was honestly just kind of punted. It was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this thing with there was really no out. Like, I mean, I didn't know about NFTs at the time, and if I'd known more, I would have been like, okay, there has to be a technology that can like tokenize this on a blockchain that will allow me to create a discrete asset that I will then be able to transact and make a living. But that thought didn't occur to me until I found NFTs, obviously. So.
Isn't it funny? It embodies that statement, the famous and now infamous quote, in retrospect, it was inevitable, or in hindsight, it was inevitable, where, I mean, part of the reason this show exists in the first place, part of the reason that we're here having this conversation is through the power of digital art ownership. And I go back to thinking about the love and care that you put into creating your digital pieces and other artists, of which we can name 100, and the tens or hundreds of hours that they're putting into crafting these artworks. Of course, there should be a way to transact those directly to a collector if that's what the artist wishes to do, outside of just forging a relationship with a brand, or contracting out, or making a billboard, or making their own shirt or art book company, right? There was no way to actually transact the literal work of art. And in retrospect, it was inevitable that we would get here. And I guess in a strange way, it was blockchain. And today, of course, the most popular network, Ethereum, many others, but that stands at the lead class now. But how do you feel about that statement? Did you feel then that it would be inevitable? Or again, were you just kind of following, you punted it, you were following the love of the game and seeing what happened?
Yeah. You know what? I feel like just kind of like honestly, just kind of give up at a certain point. You're like,
Yeah.
look, there isn't anything on the horizon that looks like this will be turned into a viable thing. But I was growing a large audience of people that liked the work. And I liked making the work. And I was like, okay, cool. Like this feedback loop may just be like what it is. You know, I make art, thousands of people like the art. Cool, right? Like, you know, I'll just keep running the side gigs to pay for it all. And, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I just feel really fortunate that tech conspired as it did to actually make it all work. Yeah, that's the thing. When I saw the Beeple announcement about him selling something, just like scroll right past the 69 million and just say, okay, wait, how did you actually sell this? What is the process of tokenizing something to sell? How do you actually do this? And I mean, as soon as I saw that article, 2 days later, I spent hours figuring out MetaMask and recovery phrases, and you know, was like deep into it. So
Did you have a dawning at that moment, or maybe one that followed it, that fate, in a sense, met you and your years of effort that you put in and rewarded you?
yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of shocked when I get lucky. I don't expect it. And I feel like it just felt really fortuitous and a very meaningful way. Like it was kind of like, I can't believe like all of my efforts over these last years have all of a sudden like materialized into something real because of this technology. Like I was just doing all of this work, waiting for technology that I didn't know would exist or ever like would ever come into being. And it was even I never even considered it. And then all of a sudden, this technology, which is the missing piece to all of it, just materializes. And then it's like, let's like time to go. Like let's run with this. Let's see where this goes.
Talk about the importance of audience to art. Now, I think you've experienced that in multiple senses. You've experienced that before there was ownership. I mean, obviously there was the physicals you were creating, there was ownership
Right.
of those, but not the digital works. But yet you were building an audience around it. You had that feedback loop going and you were interacting with that audience. And of course, now post digital art ownership, you have a different, maybe a more invested feedback loop going with digital art advocates. How do you think about audience and art together?
Well, I think it's critical. It's kind of like if a tree falls and all that, right? I think you know, as an artist, your job is twofold. Um, Number one, I feel like you have to tell an interesting and relevant story with your work. And this is if you want it to last. I'm not talking about 16 different burn mechanics and triggering a bunch of FOMO with people so they all buy whatever version of Skull you've just created. Like that's a product. That's just kind of like pop fiction, you know, uh, pulp fiction, just kind of reaching for like a moment in time. You know, for critical art that's going to last, you know, stuff that's actually going to hold up over, you know, 10, 20, 50 years. I feel like you have to tell an interesting story that's relevant to people. You have to affect people in the real world. And the other side of that, which comes back to audience, is that the second thing you have to do as an artist is you have to figure out how to tell your story to enough people to give yourself a chance of your story sticking. So you can have the best art story in the world. You can be telling some amazing critical piece about the nuance of the culture that we've created here. But if you don't tell it to enough people, maybe it doesn't stick and it just kind of gets lost in the void, right? So I feel like you have to do the two things. And so audience, I think, is critical. I mean, it always has been, art always has been a relationship with the artist and the viewer, you know, or the artwork and the viewer. So without an audience, you have nothing. So you have to grow both, and it is what it is. Just accept it, focus on, deal with it, right? I mean, yeah, it's funny. I had good advice from the playwright David Mamet early on, and he was talking about he's a writer, but he was talking about writing, but in the context of art, and he was just saying if you want to be a writer, it's not good enough to just write when you can. He's like, if you want to write full time, he's wake up and start at 8, work until 5, and do that every day. And I think that's the same with art. If you want this to be a real thing for the long run, and you want to grow and develop and make it your full-time thing, you have to figure out how to make it your full-time thing. You rely far too much on luck. If you're just hoping to hit it big with one thing, and just figure out how to prioritize and put in the time. And if you can't, don't put in the time.
I think it's interesting how antithetical a schedule seems to art, right? Or at least the public perception of art and the creative process. But at the famous quote of David Allen, there's freedom in structure. And I think there's a lot of creativity and a lot of exceptional art that comes from productive constraints.
I think so too. I mean, you look at, I think movies are actually a very good example of this. And I've heard a lot of directors talk about this, is that if you have an unlimited budget, your work by and large isn't very good. And a lot of the best cinema has come from heavily constrained budgets where you're forced to be creative, you're forced to adapt, you're forced to think of creative solutions to problems that you have. Too much sugar isn't healthy. There's really something, and you find that with artist work too. I feel like you look across the board, I feel like one of the most interesting things about the space, to take a step back for a second, is the diversity of work and the diversity of artist experiences. Our community is made up of artists globally. We have people from third world countries, we have people from marginalized communities, we have people coming from exceptional wealth and privilege, but they're all in the same place. And what you get is so many diverse stories, and you get so many diverse stories told within the art. And you can tell your own experience with authority. You can use your medium to tell, and this is one of the things about the artists who've really developed their craft, is that the artists who've really developed their craft will be able to use their specific mediums to tell their stories in nuanced ways that you can't use in other mediums. You can tell different stories with photography than you can with glitch. You can tell different stories with 3D renders than you can with photography. All these different mediums offer different opportunities to be able to share a narrative. So the real masters of it know how to use their medium in the ways that you can't do in the other mediums. And that point becomes a conscious choice. It's kind of cool. Like, you chose to do it this way. Why did you choose to do it this way? You chose to tell the story. Why did you choose to tell the story? And I feel like this is why, again, a big part of why I like talking with you is I know you get this. We talked about this. And I think the most interesting stuff comes down to stories that only the artist can tell in a medium that they deeply understand and can really leverage to best tell their story in comparison to other media. So it's like you have your unique story as an artist. You look at like Ellie the Great from Nigeria. You look at Carlos Marcial. You look at Osinachi. You look at, you look at these artists from around the world, and they have unique experiences, their own unique stories, and they tell them in a very interesting way because they really are masters of their craft in the medium. So interesting story paired with the excellent execution of the medium, I feel like ends up with some really brilliant art. So
to bring it back to something you talked about earlier, it's multiple definitions of medium. We talked about the expression of even the social medium, the method through which the art is shared.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever strayed too far? let's say you are sharing on a certain medium like Twitter, and let's say
Yeah.
the audience is engaging in a certain manner. Have you ever felt yourself stray away maybe from your own artistic preferences or your own journey and have to pull that back later?
I feel like to my detriment, I've, I've I mean, maybe it's like slowed up progress a little bit, but I've always been really, maybe like overly principled about how I view things. Um, I haven't, I'm vocal about how I feel about different things. And I feel like if it's, by and large, if I don't feel like it's an authentic approach to it, or I feel like it's driving, I don't like hype. I don't like FOMO. Um, I don't like, I don't like the tricks that distract people or get people to make choices they wouldn't have otherwise made. I would like it if you just like clear and sober looked at a piece of art and said, does this resonate with me or not? And if it does, great. By and large, it won't, because there's a lot of art and everyone's different, right? But just like clearly just assess the art, be like, is this good? Does this make sense for me or not? Not, I have 35 minutes to get this, otherwise I won't be able to, and you buy it, and it's like, I don't know, that's not really the, I feel like it's a cheap trick in that replaces actually building compelling narratives and compelling stories and artists, building something more durable. And then, I think one of the challenges I think we get in the space because of this is you have a lot of work like that, where a lot of it is kind of price driven, scarcity driven, kind of FOMO things that a bunch of people buy into. And then everybody wants to, by and large, their investments to be preserved and to grow. So then you have a bunch of people then trying to grow / preserve this investment in the thing that they kind of FOMOed into, and end up with kind of this weird world where this work that they probably otherwise wouldn't have purchased without a time constraint or a mechanic or something like that being heavily shared and promoted, because these people now no longer don't want to lose money. And it ends up, I feel like, elevating a lot of things that probably in a clear world, those things wouldn't have been elevated over some of the other work. And I, did the curation recently. NFC Summit and IHAM Gallery asked if I'd curate a glitch exhibition for display at NFC Summit in Lisbon, and then at the IHAM Gallery in Paris. So we put out an open call, had 700 artists submit around 1,000 works, and we picked 10. So yeah, it's great. So I realized very quickly it's a fantastic way to make 10 friends and 990 enemies. So well played, checkmate. But we figured it out. But just it was a glitch show, but I wanted to be expansive with the definition of glitch. I feel like one of the things we're coming from the contemporary art world. We're coming from a world that's been so heavily gatekeepered with managers and galleries. Artists just get absolutely squeezed. I did a show, I ended up getting, I think, 15%.
Wow.
Of my sales after gallery cut, manager cut, taxes. Like, it was brutal, right?
That's brutal. That's
on
the extreme end right there.
That was my biggest sale by a large margin. I was like, fantastic. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got 15% of the ticket. And we see that. And then that was also coming from a fortunate circumstance that I sold something for a decent amount in the contemporary art world, which is you navigated a labyrinth to get there anyway. So I just, the idea of obviously we're working on it. But the whole kind of the gatekeeper aspect of it. And I feel like there's a gatekeeper aspect around genres as well. You know, there's everyone kind of wants to get their little fiefdom established and then put their arms out and then build a moat and some bulwarks and a drawbridge, maybe get a dragon, right? And just like, they just don't want anyone to come into their space. They get their space, they get it established. And I can appreciate that, right? You've been struggling as an artist for a long time until, you know, many of us kind of, you know, now, and you just don't want anything to disrupt that. But I feel like you just have to be careful not to let that bleed into some bad behavior. You know, like it has to be inclusive, and so many of these definitions about what something is, especially like you're seeing recently, because glitch art is kind of bubbled in popularity just recently, and everyone is talking more about glitch art than they ever have. And then you start seeing the same aesthetics again and again. You have, you know, like a bunch of stuff looks like it's straight out of photo mosh, or it just looks like yet another X copy derivative, right? And then all of a sudden, these things become glitch art, you know, in quotes. But I've never really liked the aesthetic definitions of these things. Here's what something has to look like for it to be the thing. And the thing that I liked about glitch art originally was that there was something interesting to me about the corruption of the code. So I make these physical pieces that didn't feel native online, but with glitch, you know, I was playing with WordPad. You go in there, you just break a bunch of lines of code and see what creates a distorted image. I liked the idea conceptually of glitch being kind of an aberration of the foundation of the thing. You know, it's like the essence of the thing is built of code, and if you distort the code, you create a warped image. And that was interesting to me. I like the idea of glitch being this aberration of the foundation of something, this breaking of the code, just breaking of the fundamental thing that makes up the thing. And especially for our space here, I think maybe a big reason why glitch has done so well is I feel like we're all kind of on the same page thematically. I mean, what we're doing is glitching a lot of the different systems. We're fundamentally attacking the code of a lot of existing structures that benefit a lot of people. I mean, we talk about the whole financial aspect of it. I mean, look what crypto has done to traditional finance. I mean, it kind of represents a bit of an existential threat in a lot of ways to a lot of different people. How money transacts across borders, how people have sovereignty, how the state doesn't have access to all of their funds. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of glitching the existing system. And that's important, that's relevant. And that's what I think is interesting about the genre, is I feel like riffing on that theme. And all of those things are real and relevant and important elements in the real world. All of those things are significant outside of the space. So when you come back and try to define the genre by X copy lookalikes and a bunch of photo mosh work, it's like, this has fundamentally missed the mark in how we are kind of coalescing to define what glitch is. So I thought that was important, and I wanted to curate a show with glitch art conceptually, and it's a very expansive definition of glitch, but I wanted to highlight work that I felt was fundamentally attacking the makeup of existing structures and highlight that. So that was the work I selected, and there were, again, 700 artists submitted work for this. I just picked what I thought was best, what I thought was best and on point with this expansive definition of glitch. I wanted people that were telling stories. I wanted people that created work that felt to me that was exploring interesting themes and interesting levels of kind of subversion and, you know, disruption of existing systems. And I did, and it was an absolute pleasure. I mean, there was so much amazing work in the show. It was incredibly hard to go through it all, but in the end, picked 10 pieces that I thought were incredible. And coincidentally, you know, I don't really like the term emerging artist, because a lot of quote emerging artists have been making work for 10 years, and it's just a matter of, you know, whether they haven't leveraged the hype trains as efficiently as other artists, or whether they just haven't been noticed, because not every artist is, you know, P.T. Barnum, right? I mean, it takes a little bit, and, you know, I know we all see the three-ring circus with a lot of things in the space.
Oh yeah.
So not every artist is that way, but there's some artists producing amazing work that I feel like just haven't quite popped on the broad radar in the space. And, you know, being able to highlight some artists making amazing work that coincidentally weren't that well known. And that's the important thing. Like, it's just coincidentally that they weren't particularly well known, because I had no preference for name in the curation. You didn't get any points if you were famous. I just wanted to go through the work and pick what I thought was the best work out of the submissions. And
Impossible
hard choices, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Impossible exercise, but pick one that just randomly comes to mind now of the 10 that you selected, and give us an insight as to why you picked it, and some aspects of the art.
Yeah, we'll go with Predation by All Take, and shoot me on pronouncing Twitter handles.
It's an impossible exercise. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Yeah. All Take. It's 80 Labs. Did an amazing piece. Also, Turquoise is a photographer. Nihilus is a photographer. And I don't think if you looked at it, you would say, oh, this is the glitch aesthetic. And I think that's kind of the point. I felt conceptually there was the glitch spirit there. And that was what I wanted. But yeah, just there's some really, really amazing work, and I'm really happy to see that a lot of the artists have sold work since, because of some new visibility here. But I think that moving forward, I'll probably be curating a little bit more. I enjoyed the process, and, you know, I spend a lot of time talking about art on Twitter. And it's nice to be able to, it's always nice to be able to do what you say, right? There's it's a kind of extra level there. And I felt like, you know, curating this was a nice way to actually do a lot of things that I've been talking about. So again, but brutal process. I mean, it was really amazing work, and I shared it, and, you know, I hope people use it as a Join was a fantastic partner in this. You know, they basically, the submission process basically share the image as a reply on the thread, and it would automatically pull that from that, throw it on the Join website. No buttons, no third-party integrated, so it made it really easy to just go look through all of the work. That was good. It also makes a really good discovery thread. I was encouraging people to check out just all 1,000 submissions. It's nice too. It's relatively blind.
Something important that you said it's important to do what you say. And my first mental response to that is, then what you say becomes more meaningful. And I know you referred to P.T. Barnum earlier, and sometimes that thought or feeling that, you know, you need to be P.T. Barnum to get the attention, at least relative to the short term. Agree or disagree? Now, I feel like there are many ways to get attention over the long term, right? Things start to broaden out. You can repeat yourself, you can stay consistent, and there are other ways to get it done. Agree or disagree? The year 2023 represents a more forceful and convicted Patrick Amadon on social messaging than ever before.
I love it. Agree. Agree. You know,
I don't know what the moment was, but it is felt. It is deeply felt. And I have picked my head up or eyes up at multiple points in time, encountering you on socials. And I thought something has, I don't think you've changed necessarily. I've had the fortune to know you for a little while now, and I've been impressed since day one of some of the conversations we've been able to have. Um, but how you're expressing yourself, I feel like you're punching me in the mouth. And I mean that in the most loving of ways. So please say it in your words.
No, that means a lot. I mean, I care about the space a lot. I care about artists a lot. I've struggled as an artist for a long time. So for artists to be able to make a living and for us to have an inclusive space that any artist can get into um, with a good chance of success, at least the chance of success, I think is really important. I think we're building something new. I think we're building something that's much better than it was before. And it's a fight. It's a real fight. There are a lot of platforms, there are a lot of third parties, there's a lot of outside money that want to just apply the templates that worked in the old world to this world. And there's a lot of pressure on people to conform. They put out some pretty significant carrots to get people to get in line. And I feel like we're just a bit of a existential crisis right now. Fighting kind of for the ethos and the soul of the space. Like we have something. There are elements of something really beautiful here, and we can fight for those, or we can accept what is given to us. And I just feel like time and time again, you kind of have this beaten down PTSD class of people, artists who are just so used to just accepting what's given and being grateful for it, helping people understand that at this moment in time, right now, artists have the power. And I don't believe people really fully understand what that means at sufficient scale. You even look at like Super Rare, right? They're established as the gatekeeper, the arbiter of who's a good one of one artist and so forth. How many updates did they make to their platform over the years? They couldn't even keep a functional platform running. Did they do discovery? No. Did they do shows? No. Did they really invest any resources in artists? Not really. Why? Because they're super rare and artists were begging to be let onto the platform, and in turn, super rare, I feel like, abused their position in that space and didn't invest into artists and invest their resources into making the system better for them. And you see this across the board too. Super rare is just a very visible example of this. And I feel like on the artist side, if artists understood that we are in fact the most important thing in space for them, if we say we're not working with you, they're done. And I feel like it's perfectly fair for us to say there are basic artist living requirements that are not being implemented that could very easily be implemented if you just listen and spend a little bit of time and money on it. And I feel like that's one of the powers that we have as artists right now. You talk about contemporary art world. No, you look at music, it's far worse for music. But once the structures get in place, it becomes very difficult to disrupt them. But right now, we're still kind of in the primordial soup era of digital art, and we still have an ability to affect change before the mold sets. I was really grateful for, and I obviously hope it didn't affect anybody, listening. I know it did, but you look at Luna and Celsius and all of these other external macro events that really threw a lot of uncertainty in the crypto world. It broke the mold. If 2021 kept going, we would have continued to have Super as the sole arbiter of who is a one-of-one artist and who isn't. which is a impossible job for anybody. So no, it's not that nobody could have done that. And you look at the result of what happened because the space was disrupted. It didn't take off. It didn't continue to take hold. Now we have Manifold. We have Transient coming up. We have much more artist sovereign opportunities. We have people being able to sell on Foundation Worlds, on Super Rare, on Manifold, on OpenSea. You have so many different avenues that the world is much flatter right now because of all of the disruption over the last few years. We were ready in 2021, and we're probably still not ready now, but we are in a much better place as a community, as an art movement right now than we would have been in 2021 if this thing kept going. So, if it's not, I feel like we just have to like continually burn things and rebuild things until they're right. It's the same process as art, right? You just keep hacking away at it until it works. So I don't know. It's just important. It's important that we create a better ecosystem for artists, because what we all create right now is what not only we get, but it's what thousands and thousands of artists will inherit from us down the road. So, what our decisions and our collective will matters and affects not only our lives, but affects artists' lives for a very, very long time, because I'm very much of the opinion that digital art will have a bigger footprint than any other art movement to date historically. And just we're at the very beginning stages of that. Give it 10 to 20 years, which sounds like an eternity, and it is. But not really in the greater like art historical context. I mean, like the majority of collectors in the contemporary art world that are making moves, making waves, and kind of determining who is who are constantly 60 to 80 years old. Mm-hmm. It's a group of people that were fortunate enough to make fortunes, fortunate enough to live long enough to go travel everywhere in the world and do all the things. So when you're 60, you've done it all. So what do? You buy art. You buy art, you get some interesting things to talk about, and get some nice little financial leverage and planning and all the other things that come with high-end art. But the group of 60, 80-year-olds determining kind of what's cool, which is really interesting. I feel like it's the only industry in the world where the tastemakers are, retirees like that. But also too, basically, if you're 40 or younger, you probably grew up with a computer. The older that age group didn't grow up with a computer. Computers weren't really widely available. Probably like 45 and younger had access to a computer. So the people that grew up with a computer, we're used to pixels. Like we see something on a computer screen and it feels normal, natural. There's nothing strange about that. There's nothing foreign about that. For us to be able to assign value to something that is ephemeral, like pixels, isn't as much of a stretch for us because we grew up with computers as it would be for somebody in that age group who just didn't grow up with that. You just get wired differently if you didn't have a computer as a child.
I think there's even
better for worse.
There's another layer to that too, where you labeled 45, let's say 45 and under, you grew up with some semblance of a computer. Roughly speaking, let's call it 15, 20, or 25, somewhere in that age range. They're not only growing up with computers, but they're growing up with a deep intuitive understanding of digital asset ownership, whether it be through Roblox or you name it. There are several angles to that now, obviously across blockchain technologies as well. But I think that's even more interesting, where now you collide those who grew up with computers and pixels, and then you collide with a younger generation that grows up with ownership of such things, and you have a recipe for a very, very different future.
I think so too. I think that's a absolutely fantastic point. I think this is how it all plays out too. Just the pure square footage of the screens and the proximity to everybody in their life. I don't know, like I've put art on walls. You know, you have to physically walk by the wall to see the art on the wall. You look at billboards, they're gigantic in place in public locations. Screens are in front of everybody. I feel like getting art onto digital is the screen, the wall, it's all kind of part of the transmission mechanism. It's just how art gets from artist to audience. And so much of basically the entire digital world, screen-wise, is all positioned to be optimally in front of people. Walls are not created to be in front of people. Walls just exist to hold up buildings. You know, displays are all configured to be as visible as possible. So you talk about art going onto these displays, which are increasing. I mean, how many more displays do we have now versus a decade ago? Look at these wraparound building displays, 3D displays, all of the displays. I mean, we're basically, you know, heading towards Blade Runner, and that's fantastic because that'll be more interesting. So you talk about art being able to interact with those displays, and you talk about art being able to disseminate in a much more real and significant way. And then you throw in some critical art. You talk about art that's actually doing something or saying something. And you couple that with just the ubiquitousness of display. And I feel like you have the ability to affect a lot more people with art. And the more ability you have to affect people with art, the more relevant the art becomes, the more important the art becomes, kind of in a greater socio-political context. And you couple that with people, regular people, being able to collect art. Because the problem with collecting art, if you are ultra wealthy, you're buying art as a legacy play. Plus, you can also borrow against the art. There's a lot of things you can do with the art at that level. And then you talk about art that's maybe 10,000 and below. You talk about buying art from a lot of emerging artists. You talk about buying art from mid-career, you know, artists, like kind of all in that price range. You can't borrow against that. You can't sell it. The process of selling that is absolutely brutal. There's no real market for it. You basically buy the art because you love it. Nobody gets asked to buy the art because they love it. Other than that group. Like you buy it, you know it's going to go on your wall and stay there for several years, you know, hopefully, unless you find something else you like and you put that in the garage because you can't sell it. So it's a tough ask. It's a tough ask for collectors. But now with obviously with tokenization and the technology, we have liquidity. You're no longer asking a bunch of these younger, less established collectors to buy art forever. You know, you ask them to buy art that they like, and then they can dispose of it if they want. They can sell it if they want. They can trade it if they want. They can show people. I mean, like the collecting experience at that early stage is so superior. And already, I mean, look at how many new collectors we have collecting art. It's a much easier ask to ask somebody to buy your art if they know that there is some ability to dispose of it or sell it or and make money on it or something with it later on. You know, no 40% gallery cut too, right? 40% gallery cut in front, 40% gallery cut in the back. I mean, it's a much better world. So everything's conspiring for digital art to become a absolutely massive force. We will get the record-breaking, you know, newsworthy sale volume you see with you know, the Basquiat's and the Warhols and all that in probably 10 years, 20 years. So I feel like the trick right now for artists is, you know, the market I know is just more difficult right now than it has been. But the trick is really just to figure out how to survive the next 10 years. There won't be the distinction between 2018 and 2023 that we have now. The art world, nobody really cares about early work. That's a collectible thing. That's a collectible quality. Art world, most early work isn't nearly as valuable as mid-career. Most artists hit their stride in mid-career. That's when they found their style. That's when they found their voice. That's when they're producing their best work. So historical perspective, most artists' best work comes mid-career, which, given the context and the kind of demographic makeup of our space, is years away. So I don't think I think in 10 years, it's like, oh, that's early super. That's interesting, but I don't think anyone will honestly really care outside of like kind of inside baseball niche collecting. I don't think it's necessarily a significant thing. I think it'll be much more aligned with traditional contemporary art world metrics of artist story. What's the piece about? I think we will drift far more towards them than they will towards us. I think them drifting towards us will be the acceptance of digital art as a real art, kind of get away from it's pixels, it's not real bias. I think that'll be the concession that they make, is they will say, okay, digital art is actually real art. Our concession will be, we will basically go with their metrics on how art is evaluated and so forth. And I don't know, it is what it is. I'm not saying that's better. I'm just, that'll just be what happens. So
this era of financialization of art at a more visible and tangible level is really, really intriguing. I think early on in this space, it was something that was almost uncomfortable to some people to talk about, whether that be an artist or whether that even be a collector wanting to discuss that. But I think over time, it's becoming more comfortable, and it's becoming clear that, hey, this is a 24/7, 365 public ledger-based, completely transparent. I know there are still some anonymous individuals or entities in the mix, but it's still very, very transparent, right? If you care to look. And that's different. There was a big veil up around a lot of aspects of art, whether that be the gallery breakdowns on the artist's behalf versus now a lot of light being shed on that. Whether it was, I think one of my favorite examples or least favorite examples was the auction house. When the auction house first came into the digital art space and interacted within Web3, the hammer price, that 25% addition after the fact, that was something that they actually changed the way they talked about it, because they really didn't. And a lot of the Web3 collectors were shocked and surprised at the 25% addition to what they thought that they were paying initially. And now, again, they've flipped their verbiage to make that much more transparent in nature, and it's much more in front of our faces. So talk a little bit more about that from your perspective, just this overt financialization of art. It was always happening, but a lot of it was happening behind closed doors.
Yeah. I guess, well, artists have to make a living selling art, and that's great. And it's nice that they're able to do that. I just think part of the bargain in that is that the art itself needs to be valuable and transactable. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that, I think like with so many things, like you buy what you love, and it's nice with art that you can buy work that you like and that has value, and that, you have some accessibility to liquidity in a lot of different ways by doing that. It makes it a lot easier. There's a degree of insurance there that I don't feel like maybe many artists appreciate. If somebody's willing to buy your art for $10,000, they're much more likely to be able to do that if they know that at any point they could get $8,000 back, $5,000 back, or it grows in price. Like, it makes it possible for them to do that. If that same investment they knew was going to be stuck and they wouldn't be able to recoup that, I would wager they probably wouldn't be able to. Your price would not be 10. Your price would probably be like 1 or 2. So it works out really, really well for everybody, but probably mostly for the artists. There's other things too. I feel like it's not appreciated enough, the level of risk that the collectors take buying art. It is what it is. There's a lot of art, and not all of it will retain value. So for collectors to gamble on an artist in this way, I think is critical for the functioning of the ecosystem, for the artist being able to make a living, but also I feel like not necessarily appreciated enough. Like there's no guarantee that work retains value, and I feel like it's almost like probably a lower percentage than even like VC investing. I know you're kind of like shooting broadly, kind of 10%, you're good to go. I feel like with artists is realistically probably more like 1 in 33.
Mhm.
You know, if you hit that 1 in 33, great. You know, everything worked out. But it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing, and you know, you talk about royalties, and you talk about things like that. I have very mixed feelings about all of it. I feel like people gambling on you, they love the art, but they also gamble on you. That's the thing. They gamble on you because they love the art. You know, so it's not either or. But I think it's a tricky thing. And I'm concerned that royalties don't adequately account for collector risk. You're a poker player. You know how the rake works. I'm concerned that you're basically playing poker with a 10% rake. And the more competitive this gets, everybody loses. It is what it is. If you're gonna win less than 10% of the time, and the rake is 10%, it's unsustainable.
I think we can agree that, you tell me, but the concept of a blanket 10% royalty as applicable to everything, I think it's productive to move past that. I do think it's interesting to consider the protection of that in unique circumstances. And I think it's also important to acknowledge a significant group of artists who really pushed for something that was valuable and tangible to artists at that time, largely in context with one-of-one artworks. And I think it's critical to frame that appropriately in history, because when saying there should be maybe more flexibility, more dynamism to royalty structures, more consideration to royalty structures, it's not taking away from those efforts, because I think royalties are a very compelling symbiotic relationship, potentially in their best expression. They represent a symbiotic relationship between artist and collector. 10% flat across the board, applicable to everything regardless of quantity and circumstance, probably not the way.
Right. Yeah. And I don't care about the other stuff. I'm just talking one-of-ones. So
yeah. Forget all the other stuff.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. That's like there's like collectibles, and then there's art, right? We coexist. It's a different market. It's different metrics for collectibles.
What about your edition count, sir?
My edition count is quite low. I think editions are art. Like that's all. Art is art. Collectibles are collectibles. I think they're just judged on different metrics, and they're just different things. One is not better than the other. It's just we've conflated two separate worlds because we're all in the same place. I think things can also have value in both worlds as well. I would say like early super work has collectible value, right? It's cool. It's like these are some of the first art NFTs, right? That will always have value as a collectible. Does it have value from like a critical art perspective? No. Does the art have value as a critical? Yeah, it's a separate thing. Like there's and I think they're additive by and large. So, but I think it's interesting to kind of pick out what's giving different things value. So
it's interesting. So go at it. What I meant by your edition counts, what's the productive difference that you draw between, let's say, your most recent one-of-one artwork versus Wolf, which I believe is an edition count of, is it 99? Somewhere in the vicinity of 100
Mhm.
editions, right?
Yeah,
What's
99.
the difference between those two things?
I think it comes down to accessibility. You know, when I came into the space, you know, I didn't want to mint anything on Ethereum, because Ethereum always felt like kind of the big leagues and like the real ledger of art. Sorry, other chains, but you know, I embrace. I really want to see a multi-chain future because I feel like that decouples art from token prices, which I think is helpful. But that being said, one of the biggest issues I feel like we face as artists and as a space in terms of adoption is the same thing we hear from traditional collectors every day, which is show me that this will be here in 50 years. So, but for the circle back to that, but as for the Wolf, I feel like people have different needs. People love art. So how do you allow people that want to collect your work to be able to collect your work in a meaningful way for them? You know, on the high end, I know like a lot of well-to-do collectors aren't as interested about collecting an edition piece. They want a more meaningful investment into the artist. On the other side, a lot of people can't afford that, but they still want to collect and have a meaningful investment for them and the artist, which, you know, it's editions of different sizes. So, you know, and I feel like we're all doing this together. You know, it's a very cohesive community, which is fantastic. Um, so I think that's kind of the thing. I gave my Wolf away to 99 of the people when I first came into the NFT space that were really supportive and you know, friends. So I just gave it away to ask them all for the Tezos addresses and did it all manually because I didn't have any better way of doing it at the time.
All the brute force that you put in the
Yeah,
now old days.
yeah, exactly. In the now old days. Yeah, but that was that. So I mean, I kind of I've settled on 25 as a good addition amount recently. Um, I don't think, and I'll do distribution's a big thing too. Um, you know, I think it's a huge consideration for artists. It's how do you distribute work into the hands of the people that will be most supportive of your career. And I think it comes down to a couple things. I think number one, it can't just be about dollar value. I feel the more you focus on dollar value, the more you catch what you paid for, right? If you're fishing with financial incentives, you'll get people that want financial incentives, not necessarily long-term holders or supporters. If you like mechanics and you do a lot of mechanics, you get people that like mechanics, which could be cool. I mean, that could be great for you as long as you really like mechanics, because you really just want people aligned with your long-term vision. And if this is what you want to do, you want people that like what you want to do. So, you know, I don't know. I do the edition pieces. I'll have people DM me. I'll put out an edition piece and people can DM me, and then, you know, it's kind of basically who DMs me first, hybrid combo with do I know you're a real person? Do we have some acknowledgement? Because I just don't want to, like, I want my pieces to be accessible, but I also want to give my pieces to people that really want to collect them and not turn around and just flip them immediately, because the edition prices I try to do lower than what the market would be, because I feel like I just price a bunch of people out if it was the market price for it. And I would much rather give pieces to people that have been supportive for a long time and want to honestly, legitimately collect it and just have something for a long time in their wallet. And I feel like the only way to do that is by underpricing, which is a good position to be in, but, you know, underpricing the editions for now. But, you know, it's nice, like we're all in this together. Like I'd much rather see friends win and friends, have these pieces that they have a good story, like, down the road, like, yeah, we DM'd with friends, like that's how I got the piece. I feel like that's much better than, if I put it up for auction or listed it or something like that, like they just get bought up by a bunch of flippers, and the flippers would then sell the pieces to, and I don't know, it doesn't feel optimal. So I feel like putting in a little extra effort to just, I think I had like 250 DMs the last edition thing for 25 pieces. So
I may or may not have been one of those.
Yeah.
Did not get one that time. Did not get one that time. I was too late.
Yeah. I do my best to, like, people that have shown an interest and I've known for a little bit. If they want a piece, I want to figure out how to get them a piece.
I like it. You're proactive about that symbiotic relationship. I think it's a very powerful concept, like considering it from both sides. And you said it's fortunate to be in a position where you can think that way, but it's a very, very powerful way to think. A decision that you made not too long ago now, but one I want to talk about in the context of the future of art. You made the decision to go Creative Commons, CC0 or CC0. Let's start with what is that, and why did you decide to frame your art that way?
Yeah, so CC0, Creative Commons, basically put your art in the public space, and people can use it for whatever they want. They can monetize it, they can do whatever. I think that one of the, I feel like, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but leaning into media and then exploring what is actually unique about the circumstances that you're in. And I feel like one of the circumstances that's unique about digital art is that we have provenance. We have blockchain provenance. We can see on the ledger, which is immutable, exactly what's going on, who owns what. And I feel like that opens us up and frees us from a lot of the, intellectual property disputes and nonsense, and the kind of the former, it's a bunch of fiefdoms again, a bunch of people fighting over how to monetize things. And we're building as a community. I like the idea that we can work together, and I like the idea that we can work together to just kind of advance our art in our space. I haven't collabed with any artists. Honestly, it sounds stressful to me. And it's, I don't know, I'm really busy with all of the things too. Not that it wouldn't be fun, but CC0 is just like, if you want to use something, use something. And there's been a number of artists that use something. And so it's nice just to say, cool, if you want to use something, use it. I don't like, you want to figure out like how I built a glitch. Like, yeah, just deconstruct it, and it's all there. I don't think there's anything. I think there's not only, I don't think there's anything, like no one can take your stories, no one can take your perspective. There's no like fear of that. If you want to take the style, take the style. Good luck. Like do your thing. Like it's not a big deal. I have no intention of selling my work to Adidas or some company. I'm not going to be the face of, Burberry or something. I could care less about any of that. Like I absolutely won't do that. So I'm not losing anything personally in that regard, because I'm not selling my work commercially to corporations. But no, it just feels like the right thing to do in space. We have provenance, and I feel like CC0 gives us the opportunity to collaborate as a community in a very different way and to build things together. And also just to, again, like demonstrates the value of provenance. It's like, I feel like a big part of what we have to do is we have to make this whole thing concrete for people. We have to make pixels real. We have to make blockchain provenance real. Well, how do you do that? Right? I mean, it's a bit of a war of attrition over a number of years, but CC0, I feel like, helps kind of advance the cause of the space. If we say, hey, look, I put my work in the public domain, to which non-Web3 artists are horrified. They're shocked. How could you possibly do that? That is career suicide. Like, you won't be able to make a living if you do that. And then here we are unbothered because we know what blockchain provenance does. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, wait a minute. that blockchain provenance is actually real. Like, tell me more about that. This thing allows you to put your work in the public domain and still make a living. You haven't committed career suicide. And I feel like it just makes the value of provenance demonstrable. So
it's fascinating to consider what that does for the growth of art or the growth of an artist, where I've been using this term recently, like speed running a career. You know, like the table is set right now to really do that. And when you think about how some works of art, and listen, I'm not an expert art historian, but just very generally speaking, when certain works of art gain global popularity, you know, hundreds of years ago, that takes quite some time for that to happen, right? To as full of an extent as things can happen right now in a matter of, I mean, months under the right circumstances. And to think about sticking your work right in the public domain from day one, it does allow a lot of interested parties to share unencumbered. And you can see that catching virality in a much different way. And as long as it does tie back to that concrete sense of provenance that the blockchain offers, it's a really, really interesting recipe that quite literally changes the future of where this is all going.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that was really well said. You know, like even like I'm doing a solo show in Seoul next month. You know, and they were like, what about, can we do posters? Can we sell posters of the work? I said, you realize it's all CC0, right? Just make posters. They're like, well, how much should we charge? How much would you like? I was like, don't pay me anything. That's the whole point of this. Like, make posters, design however you want. Here are frames from the GIFs. Make posters out of whatever you want. And don't pay me, because if you paid me, it wouldn't tell the CC0 story in the right way. And I want to use this as a use case for CC0. So yeah, make the posters, sell the posters. Wish you all the best with that. That's part of the CC0 thing. Just go have fun.
It's such a, all right, I've been thinking a lot about this, as I mentioned, a lot about this recently. I'm really coming around to this being the right side of history. And I think it does speak to the fact that it's a consideration. For a lot of people, they still think it's career suicide. A lot of people will think that way for quite some time. Like, we're not even close to turning that corner. I'm pretty confident you're going to be on the right side of this, man. I'm pretty confident that this is a decision that will look really, really good, especially because you are so grounded and just fundamentally convicted in who you are as an artist, as a person, like that you're able to put that forth with such clarity and narrative consistently on a social platform that's growing attention by the day. I think that matters an awful lot. But because you are so powerfully convicted, the page turn of 2023 and Patrick Amadon's our artist journey, that being so palpably felt, I think that continues, and you'll end up very, very much on the right side of this. And I look forward to it. As, I mean, you're not the only artist, but you're one of a relatively few today that are going about things that way. And I think these are going to be historical case studies, and I think they're going to be quite interesting ones.
Thank you.
So Patrick, as we get closer wrapping up here, I want to ask you two things, just off the top of your head, as we consider the future of what this is and where this is all going. What's one thing that you concretely expect to happen? You can frame that in the next calendar year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. What's one thing that you concretely expect? And then what's one thing that you don't necessarily expect, but that you would hope for in the best of circumstances?
One thing I concretely expect to happen is I expect digital art and artists to significantly step up in terms of public visibility outside of the space. I just think everything about the direction that we're going, we talked about the screens, we talked about the role of digital art kind of in culture. I expect visibility and interest to continue to scale up in a meaningful way. So I just really hope that artists in the space can figure it out right now. This is the hardest it will be. It will be hard for different reasons later on, just with the number of people and the competition, and a lot of the structures will get solidified in different ways. So we'll have different fights, but if you can stick it out right now and figure it out, I feel like you will forever be part of this early wave of digital art, and you will be well suited and well positioned for being able to make a living in art. So just I would encourage people to just not get discouraged and to stick this out, because this is only going somewhere very positive, and possibly somewhere that is unprecedented in history for the role of artists in society, and their visibility and their importance and their general public regard. So I'm optimistic about that. And so that's something I think will concretely happen. Something that I hope will happen is that I have a couple projects I'm working on right now that involve a lot of hacking, a lot of coding in some foreign countries.
Some glitching.
So there will be some glitching. So I hope those go well. One in particular on the 4th of June. So it's fun to play with things in the real world with digital art. So, I really hope we can see a lot more of that. I feel like we have a tremendous capacity to affect things in the real world. And I really hope that we can see a lot more artists doing art that causes significant disruptions in the real world. And I think that's really a huge point of inflection, I think, for our space, in making digital art real for people and kind of legitimizing everything that everybody is doing here, is when we can start materially affecting news cycles and people's experiences in daily life. So that's my thing. I feel like, it's cute. There's some element of like culture building and camaraderie with all the memes and the Pepe and all this stuff. But I feel like for us to really grow and do something important, I feel like we have to look more outward and look more at how our art can affect people outside of our space. And I hope that's more of a direction that we can go. Obviously people love collecting the inside baseball stuff. They love collecting the internal references and the memes and the jokes and the skulls and all the stuff that matters in our space, but isn't really visible and important to the outside world. I hope we can invert that a little bit. I know that's what a lot of people rely on to make a living, but I hope we can shift the focus a little bit more towards how we're all creating and building to affect people outside of our space, because that's how we grow, that's how we expand, that's how we increase the relevance of what we're doing here, is by touching more and more people that don't know what we're doing right now. And that's my hope. My hope is that we can grow in that capacity, and I guess grow in that direction, because we do. I mean, we have the ability to materially affect the world, and the more that we do that, the more people will see value and importance in the art and the artists coming from this space, and the better off everybody's life will be, the sooner that happens.
I mean, you spoke directly to why I wanted to have you as one of the first people on this show, because why this exists at this moment in time is have a strong desire to grow, right? To grow the space, expand the space, push the boundaries, have the conversations of where is this all going? Why should anyone care? And what will be the critical factors to that happening? So I appreciate you sharing it from that perspective, and I just wanted to reciprocate and say, like, that's why I was so excited, and appreciate you making the time to make this episode happen.
No, thank you so much. I know you feel that way. I mean, I really, really appreciate you for it. And I've always really respected your opinions. And I think we're very much on the same page. And I appreciate you tremendously. I think you're one of my favorite people in space. And, I'm looking forward to all the things we do together in the future. And I just want to thank you for having me on your show again. And, it means a lot. And, I'm excited about all the things we're going to do together, and good luck with the move.
Thank you, my friend. And
Yeah.
likewise, I can't wait to see how July 4th plays out and all that comes after it, like you said. So I can't wait for that. And right before we go here, let me ask you this question. Who should be on the Future of Art? If you had to select one person that should be on this, having an amazing dialogue, who would you think about today?
I would say Bat Soup Young.
I'm good now. By the time people are hearing your words, okay, this is the cat's going to be out of the bag. But the guest that preceded you, the first guest, you are episode 2. Hey everybody, this is episode 2 of the Future of Art. The guest that preceded you is none other than Bharat of Bharat of On Cyber, and the one of the most OG crypto art collectors out there.
Yeah.
And I posed the question to Bharat, and I'm going to break it to you before you hear it, because that episode hasn't been released yet. But
you said the same thing.
But Bat Soup, man, how about it? I feel like if I didn't try and get you on this show, I would be doing everybody a disservice collectively. So I think that's hysterical, and I'm so happy there's a synchronicity there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. And then of course, where can people find you? Where should people come and witness what you're going to be doing, all of the wonderful things that you're going to be putting out, your digital disruption, your redefining of glitch art, and so much more?
On Twitter. I don't do Instagram. I just Twitter, and my DMs are always open. So as long as it's not a shill or ask me to retweet something, I'm totally open to have a discussion.
Very nice. So it's at Patrick Amadon, all one word, no spaces, no dashes, no nothing.
Yes.
Fantastic. Patrick, best of luck with everything. Appreciate you tremendously. You are one of my inspirations in the Future of Art, how you're approaching it. This not new, but still new, reconvicted version of yourself that is making and effectuating so much change out there that I think is largely beneficial to everyone involved. So appreciate you, man. All the best, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening and for being part of the Future of Art. If you liked what you heard, please do subscribe and drop a review on your favorite podcast platform. Onward to the many interviews that await us. The Future of Art is produced by Artifex. Artifex, Artifex, was created to honor today's top digital fine artists in 3 dimensions. Each artist's one-of-one work of art becomes a collectible 3D sculpture and centerpiece of an immersive world built in Unreal Engine, the creation tool of Epic Games. Visit at artifex_project on Instagram to experience those sculptures in AR, and visit artifex.art/unreal to literally step inside the art on your browser.